بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصافات صفا فالزاجرات زجرا فالتاليات ذكرا إن إلهكم لواحد رب السماوات والأرض وما بينهما ورب المشارق.
الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We continue inshallah ta'ala with the ayat of Surah As-Saffat, and we stopped at verse number 102. Verse number 102 in Surah As-Saffat. The ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم فلما بلغ معه السعي قال يا بني إني أرى في المنام أني أذبحك فانظر ماذا ترى قال يا أبت افعل ما تؤمر ستجدني إن شاء الله من الصابرين فلما أسلما وتله للجبين وناديناه أن يا إبراهيم قد صدقت الرؤيا إنا كذلك نجزي المحسنين إن هذا لهو البلاء المبين وفديناه بذبح عظيم وتركنا عليه في الآخرين سلام على إبراهيم كذلك نجزي المحسنين إنه من عبادنا المؤمنين وبشرناه بإسحاق نبيا من الصالحين وباركنا عليه وعلى إسحاق ومن ذريتهما محسن وظالم لنفسه مبين. So continuing the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam and what's mentioned in the surah about Ibrahim alayhi salam and the sunan, the ways of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the face of earth, and the trials that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested Ibrahim alayhi salam and elevated his level and the bank of al-Iman by fulfilling these commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and for us to learn from it inshallah ta'ala. So the ayah فَلَمَّا بَلَغَ مَعَهُ السَّعْيَ, so after he made the dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have an offspring after his people rejected him and disbelieved in Allah after they saw the major and clear ayat, and after they threw him into the fire and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the miraculous decree from him subhanahu wa ta'ala that the fire become bardan wa salaman ala Ibrahim, and they saw that with their own eyes and they could not do anything to him, and he secluded himself, and he says وَأَعْتَزِلُكُمْ وَمَا تَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. He left his people after all of these means of guidance for them, and he made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give him an offspring that he will be from the righteous ones for the sake of Allah, for matters of deen. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the glad tidings to Ibrahim alayhi salam, and it's mentioned in other surahs of the Quran how they came to him and the guests, the angels, and the wife of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and all of that is mentioned in details in other parts of the Quran. So here the ayah فَلَمَّا بَلَغَ مَعَهُ السَّعْيَ, so فَبَشَّرْنَاهُ بِغُلَامٍ حَلِيمٍ, he was given the son which is Ismail alayhi salam. فَلَمَّا بَلَغَ مَعَهُ السَّعْيَ, and when he, meaning his son, was old enough to walk with him, he said, "O my son, I have seen in a dream that I'm slaughtering you, offering you in sacrifice. So look what you think." He said, "O my father, do that which you are commanded. Insha'Allah, you shall find me of as-sabirin." Imam Sa'di rahimahullah, he says فلما بلغ معه السعي أي أدرك أن يسعى معه. بلغ معه السعي. السعي is the word sa'i is we know the word sa'i between as-Safa wal Marwa. What does sa'i means? To go diligently with energy between as-Safa wal Marwa. And even parts of it is that we run. So the command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to go for Jumu'ah. يا الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله. It doesn't mean just go. It means that you're focused on this. This is your mission. This is what you're going for. And you're not distracted and you're going in a very determined, energetic way to one's best ability. So when his son reached أدرك أن يسعى معه. He reached an age بلغ معه with him السعي. That means he reached an age where he can help his father. He's now not a child anymore. He's able to do things with him. وبلغ سنا يكون في الغالب أحب ما يكون لوالديه. And he reached an age where it's more likely to be the most beloved to his parents. قد ذهبت مشقته وأقبلت منفعته. This is an amazing meaning here that we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us and to guide our children, that the child, when he's not a child anymore, and he reached adulthood, the mashaqqa, the tiredness and the work that was done from the parents to him, supposed to be finished. They raised him when he was in need of them. Now it is his time to receive the benefit from him. وأقبلت منفعته. So this is the age usually that is most beloved to the parents, because now they can see the fruit, the result of the upbringing, not necessarily to their own selves, but for the deen, for the righteousness, especially if the righteous ones, and with the dua that he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have a righteous offspring. So now this is the time. When he's a child, there's no righteousness. He's not responsible for his actions. So فَلَمَّا بَلَغَ مَعَهُ السَّعِي, this is the age now where he would get to see his dua fulfilled. And this is the comfort of the eye of a righteous person, to see his sons or daughters as righteous human beings. That means he succeeded, and everything is by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So فَلَمَّا بَلَغَ مَعَهُ السَّعْي, he reached the age where it's more beloved to the parents. قَدْ ذَهَبَتْ مَشَقَّتُهُ وَأَقْبَلَتْ مَنْفَعَتُهُ. ذهبت, the mashaqqa, the tiredness, and the work has been gone because now he's an adult. وَأَقْبَلَتْ مَنْفَعَتُهُ, and the manfa'a, the benefit from his son now is coming. فقال له إبراهيم عليه السلام, Ibrahim عليه السلام, he said to him, إني أرى في المنام أني أذبحك. And this is how the test is. Now this is the time where he can benefit from his son, but instead he said, I see in my dream that I am أذبحك. الذبح is to slaughter. أي قد رأيت في النوم والرؤيا أن الله يأمرني بذبحك. That means I saw in my dream, and the ru'ya from Allah, and ru'ya al-anbiya haqq, and wahy, as he says. The dream of the prophets is not like the dream of anyone else. The dream of the prophets is revelation from Allah. That means they have to act upon it. The dream of other than the prophets, it is not wahy from Allah. It's juz min 46 juz'an min al-nubuwwah, as the Prophet ﷺ said. It's part of 46 parts of prophethood. So it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if it's a ru'ya, not a bad dream, not adghath wa ahlam, not stressed and he sees things that doesn't make sense. If it's a ru'ya, then it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But as a rule, and never to be challenged whatsoever, no actions to be built, no decisions to be made as a result of a ru'ya. Unless it's the action to make salah, to make dhikr, mashallah, is good to be reminded. But to make halal haram, haram halal, someone sees in his dream that he's harming someone to go harm him. Of course, this is not permissible. So, but the prophets are different. So, أن الله يأمرني بذبحك ورؤيا الأنبياء وحي. And the dreams, the ru'ya of the prophets are wahy, revelation from Allah. And the revelation from Allah to the prophets takes many different ways. One of which is in their dreams, one of which is Jibreel is sent and comes into their hearts. So he said to him, إني أرى في المنام أني أذبحك فانظر ماذا ترى. Then فانظر, look what you see. That means فإن أمر الله تعالى لابد من تنفيذه. When he said that to his son, some people think that he's given his son a choice to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No. But that's involves someone else, which is not himself, it's his son. So he's saying here, فَإِنَّ أَمْرَ اللَّهِ لَبُدَّ مِن تَنْفِيذِهِ. The command of Allah, we have to execute, we have to fulfill the commands of Allah. We don't have a choice. It's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it's like when you say to your son, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to make salah. So what do you think? It's not like you're giving him a choice to say, oh no, okay, I'm okay. So you say, mashallah, very good. You got a choice here. No, it's to extract from him. It's to get from him this act of obedience to Allah. Especially with something like this. Especially with what he saw in his dream. فانظر ماذا ترى. So Ismail عليه السلام, he says, فقال إسماعيل صابرا محتسبا مرضيا لربه وبارا بوالده. This is how Ismail, he said, يا أبا تفعل ما تؤمر, oh my father, do what you have been commanded. He said to him in what state? صابرا, patient, محتسبا, seeking rewards from Allah, مرضيا لربه, seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his Lord, وبارا بوالده, and doing bir, righteousness to his father. All of this in such a fulfillment of such a huge trial as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned. قال يا أبا تفعل ما تؤمر. That means go ahead with what you have been commanded, which is to slaughter him. ستجدني إن شاء الله من الصابرين. He says, أي امضي لما أمرك الله. امضي, المضي is to go forward to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered you. ستجدني, you will find me, إن شاء الله, by the will of Allah, من الصابرين, from the صابرين, from the patient ones. He says, أخبر أباه, he informed his father, أنه موطن نفسه على الصبر, that he is موطن نفسه, he is establishing himself upon الصبر, no hesitation whatsoever. ستجدني إن شاء الله من الصابرين, you would find me from the patient ones. And الموطن, الوطن is your resident, is your place of birth, the place that you attach to. So when they say موطن نفسه, وطن نفسك, that means make yourself upon whatever you supposed to do. وقرن ذلك بمشيئة الله, and he attached to it the مشيئة of Allah, إن شاء الله, لأنه لا يكون شيء بدون مشيئة الله, because nothing happened without the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is not to make it as if he might or might not do it, as sometimes people, they use the mashia in such a way which is not permissible whatsoever, unless they don't know if it's going to happen or not. But because also human beings are weak. But this is what he has, and this is what he's determined to do, and he's seeking help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because everything is by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praised Ismail alayhi salam, when he says in Surah Maryam, واذكر في الكتاب إسماعيل إنه كان صادق الوعد وكان رسول النبي, he was صادق الوعد, he was truthful in his promise. So when he said that to his father, he's truthful, seeking rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and being patient, pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قال يا أبا تفعل, and the immediate response from him to show again, this is the righteousness, this is the acceptance of the dua. We have to put things together. What is righteousness is the immediate submission to the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if a person sees in it or does not see in it with the physical means anything but as we see this as an example. And without going into details, but it requires for us to reflect. These things, it's a mandatory thing for us to reflect. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most wise, and nothing is the like of Allah. It could have been something else. Could have been pray this amount of rak'at, give charity, these types of things. But the prophets are tested the most severe test for a reason, for them, because they're elevated. And أشد الناس ابتلاء الأنبياء, the most severe in tests are the prophets. فالأمثل والأمثل, then the like of them. And for the people, those who are commanded to take them as examples, to see what's their submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you would see always that there's no harm happen to the messengers. So it's only testing the hearts and this level of submission. But while they're being tested, they don't see anything but to the fulfillment of this physical act. And this is the reality of it. And this is the sense of it. So then, فَلَمَّا أَسْلَمَ وَتَلَّهُ لِلْجَبِينِ. فَلَمَّا أَسْلَمَ, that means this is in the dual tense. Both أسلم, both submitted themselves to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not Ibrahim alayhi salam alone and not Ismail alone, both of them. أي إبراهيم وابنه إسماعيل. Ibrahim and his son Ismail. And what is the, as you see, the state of submission for them, each one is different. إبراهيم جازما بقتل ابنه. What's the submission from Ibrahim alayhi salam? He's determined. He's not hesitant. He's not going to, maybe something is going to happen. This is the submission, right? Anything that makes the person not having this determination to go forward, that's not Islam. That's not submission, right? Maybe something else. Is there a way out of this? Or Allah, making dua to Allah that things will change. So the Islam of Ibrahim in this particular matter, Ibrahim jaziman, al-jazm is al-qata', is when something is finished. Determined بقتل ابنه, to kill his own son, وثمرة فؤاده, and the fruit of his heart, that he waited for so long to have a child and traveling all the way, all of these things with the commands of Allah, as we know the story. امتثالا لأمر ربه, especially after he reached that age. امتثالا لأمر ربه, fulfilling the commands of his Lord. وخوفا من عقابه, and the fear of the punishment of Allah. So this is the أسلم for Ibrahim. قال له ربه أسلم, قال أسلمت لرب العالمين, in all incidents and all matters. والابن and Ismail عليه السلام, his Islam in that state, قد وطن نفسه على الصبر, the submission that he established himself upon patience. وهانت عليه في طاعة ربه ورضا والده. هانت عليه becomes very small thing for him to be killed. It's nothing in the obedience of Allah. If it's the obedience of Allah, nothing is major, nothing is waste, nothing is painful. If this is for sure that what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants, what is more beautiful than to be obedient to Allah? وَرِضَى وَالِدِهِ, and to seek the pleasure of his father. رِضَى الْوَالِدِينَ, for the parents to be pleased with you. If it's make them pleased with you, that you would do so much effort and so much tiredness and so, well, mashallah, and then they become pleased as a result of this, all of what you did is nothing. Something that should be very small, because the return or the reward is something that is unimaginable. Because the rida of Allah from the rida of al-walid, as the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. The pleasure of Allah is from the pleasure of the parent. If the parents are pleased with you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with you. So at the end, the person is seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made for the human beings to test them with something that is in their lifetime. So he says here, so this is the Islam of Ibrahim alayhi salam and the Islam of Ismail. وَهَانَتْ عَلَيْهِ فِي طَاعَةِ رَبِّهِ وَرِضَى وَالِدِهِ. What is this life to start with? It's all from Allah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take it. And if a person knows that this is what's pleasing to Allah, what's the purpose of this life? As Umayr ibn al-Humam al-Ansari radiallahu anhu, in the Battle of Uhud, when the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said to them, and this is the yaqeen, this is the certainty, and that's the Prophet of Allah, قُومُوا إِلَى جَنَّةٍ عَرْضُهَا كَعَرْضِ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Get up for a Jannah, the width of it is between the heavens and earth. He says, Jannah عَرْضُهَا كَعَرْضِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. He said, بَخٍ بَخٍ. So the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said to him, what made you say بَخٍ بَخٍ? He says it's an expression, two letters that shows that the person is amazed or happy. He said, nothing, O Prophet of Allah, except that I wish I'm from the people of Jannah. He said, you are from them. So he was eating dates while this was happening to get some strength. He threw the dates away and he said, لَإِنْ عِشْتُ لأن آكل تمراتي هذه إنها لحياة طويلة. For me to live, to eat these dates, it's a long life. He's given the glad tidings. What's the purpose of life? If he's going to enter Jannah, the rest is waste. And he had that certainty, wahy from Allah. The Prophet ﷺ, he does not speak from the desire. He speaks from revelation from Allah, and he went and he fought till he was martyred. So the same thing, it's to know for sure, and it always go back to the fact is the importance of al-ilm. Many people, they make things, decisions, when it comes to seeking the pleasure of Allah, but they're not certain. It might be this, it might be that. So to be certain that this is for real exactly what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with, and the only way to know that is wahy, nothing but wahy, nothing but revelation from Allah. So if the Prophet is there, this is wahy, for sure. After the Prophet, what the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam left for this the two wahy. the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, while also, of course, asking the people of knowledge. So this is what's the duty of the Muslim. Once you know, then everything else is easy afterwards. And what is the different trials that a person has working in haram? Then he get to realize that it's haram. And he asks a person of knowledge, it's haram. Then what is it? You're going to starve to death? So what? This is the attitude of what should be in the heart. Not making his calculations. But what if I do this? It's going to be this. Are you seeking the pleasure of Allah? If you are seeking the pleasure of Allah, who's the one that is the controller of the heavens and the earth? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if He forbade that for you, He's the provider. So why are you worried about your provisions and about your family, or your family happy with you, your wife, your children? All of that is nothing. And that's why hanat, what he mentioned here about hanat alayhi fi ta'atillah, everything tahun fi ta'atillah. Everything is small and little and is insignificant when it comes to the obedience of Allah. This is the major thing. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaching us in these verses, that if you do this, you're not going to, inshallah, starve to death. The mat is going to be easy, but in your heart, you don't have this. It's not like I'm going to do it and I'm going to get some goodness physically in this life. You might starve to death. Who's the owner of life and death? And of course, nothing in the deen of Islam would make the person starve to death, because the darurat, the necessities, permits then what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade. But again, the point of it, it's all with ilm, which is the wahy. So, وهانت عليه طاعة ربي ورضا والده فلما أسلم وتله للجبين، أي تل إبراهيم إسماعيل على جبينه ليضجعه فيذبحه. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, let me see the word in English that they used here. فلما أسلم وتله للجبين. It says here, and then when they had both submitted themselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he had laid him prostrate on his forehead or on the side of his forehead for slaughtering. Like when you put the goat or the sheep on the ground to slaughter it. So فلما أسلم, both of them, وتله للجبين, وتله للجبين, and he put his face in such a way. And the word تله is from التل. The word tel is a heap of, like a small hill. That's what a tel is. So tellahu, that means it's a word used when someone puts someone on the ground. When you're wrestling with someone and you put them down, what's the word they use in wrestling? Huh? Take down. This is tellahu, right? So he took him down. Of course, he did not. Ismail is willing. He's not going to like fight with him and put him down. But it shows the immediate response that he goes down right away. وَتَلَّهُ لِلْجَبِينِ, أي تَلَّ إِبْرَاهِيمُ إِسْمَعِيلَ عَلَى جَبِينِهِ, on his forehead. الجبين for the forehead. لِيُضْجِعَهُ, الضجاع is to lay down. فَيَذْبَحَهُ, so that he would slaughter him while laying down. وَقَدْ انْكَبَّ لِوَجْهِ, تَلَّهُ, that means he put him on his face. So his face is not showing to Ibrahim alayhi salam. لِأَلَّا يَنْظُرَ وَقْتَ الذَّبْحِ إِلَى وَجْهِ, so that he does not look at his face while slaughtering him. Imagine the image like this. And it was said in some of the athar that Ismail alayhi salam is the one that asked for this. Not for Ismail's sake, but for the sake of his father. So that his father doesn't feel pain when he is seeing his son, when looking at the eyes of his son while he's slaughtering. So his face is facing the ground, and then he would slaughter him. It's amazing levels of goodness and sabr and patience. فلما أسلم وتله للجبين, to the forehead, وناديناه أي يا إبراهيم. After this, and after they were in that state, وناديناه, and we called him, أي يا إبراهيم قد صدقت الرؤيا, you had truthfully fulfilled the ru'ya. So he says here in the tafsir, وناديناه, we called upon him. In what? في تلك الحال المزعجة والأمر المدهش, in this disturbing moment. And الأمر المدهش is when someone is not in a state where all of his senses are occupied in this. Anyone can imagine this. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have called them before, and when they agreed and things like this. No, it's for once it reached that state. وَنَادَيْنَاهُ أَيَّ إِبْرَاهِيمُ, O Ibrahim, قد صدقت الرؤيا. Indeed you صدقت, you believed, you truthfully fulfilled the رؤيا, the وحي from Allah. أي قد فعلت ما أمرت به. You had done what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered you to do perfectly. He didn't slaughter his son, but this is as we know, that the level of al-azima, which is nothing left but the action itself, not before that. فإنك وطنت نفسك على ذلك, you established yourself upon this. وفعلت كل سبب, and you took all the means. ولم يبق إلا إمرار السكين على حلقه. What's left is that the knife will touch his throat and do the slaughter itself. That was right there, because this is the last thing that was left. إن كذلك نجزي المحسنين. Indeed, this is how we recompense al-muhsinin. And if we want to know that this is the ihsan, this is the ihsan, not the ihsan that we ourselves, we cannot define it to ourselves according to circumstances, according to how people are with the deen of Allah. Al-muhsinin fi ibadatina, in the worship of Allah. Those who are al-muqaddimina ridana ala shahawati anfusihim. Those who would put forward the pleasure of Allah over their own desires in their own selves. Even if it's their entire life and whatever it contains, even if it's wealth and all of this. And this is the ihsan. So we are being taught what is al-ihsan. So al-ihsan is mentioned with speech and with actions, so that the matter is clear what is al-ihsan. So أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, and Ismail, without seeing Allah, imagine that this while they're seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they would do it very happily. Anybody would do this very happy because they're seeing Allah. And if they don't see Allah, they know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is seeing them. So for the believers, the end result is the same. So this is what al-ihsan is in this action. And then إن هذا لهو البلاء المبين وفديناه بذبح عظيم. But indeed this is the real bala, or the clear bala. We'll end with this inshallah, and we continue tomorrow inshallah. It says إن هذا الذي امتحنا به إبراهيم عليه السلام. What we tried Ibrahim عليه السلام with, and imtihan is the test. لهو البلاء المبين. Indeed لهو تأكيد. Indeed this is البلاء, the trial, test, المبين, very clear, no ambiguity in it. أي الواضح الذي تبين به, this clear بلاء that تبين به becomes very clear. صفاء Ibrahim, the purity of Ibrahim عليه السلام. So this is what the bala does. The trial is to extract from the person, to test the person whether he is purely in state of submission to Allah or not in the state of submission to Allah, or in between. This is how it is. صفاء Ibrahim وكمال محبته لربه, and his perfect and complete love to his Lord. وخلته, this level of al-khilla, Khalilullah, means the closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with his love. فإن إسماعيل عليه الصلاة والسلام لما وهبه الله لإبراهيم. Ismail, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him as a gift to Ibrahim alayhi salam, أحبه حبا شديدا. And this is by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He made them love him an intense love. وهو خليل الرحمن. And he is the Khalil of Ar-Rahman. والخلة أعلى أنواع المحبة. This is the wisdom behind it. Al-khilla is the highest level of love. وهو منصب لا يقبل مشاركة. It's a status, it's a position, does not accept musharaka, partnership. And it comes from al-khilla is this small ditch in the ground that when you walk on it, it fits one person only. Like a small thing. If two people walk, it's not going to fit. So al-khilla is only one. So ويقتضي أن تكون جميع أجزاء القلب متعلقة بالمحبوب, which requires that every part of the heart is attached to the mahbub, to the loved one. فلما تعلقت شعبة من شعب قلبه بابن إسماعيل, when a part شعبة, like شعب الإيمان, when a part of the heart of Ibrahim alayhi salam get attached to the love of his son Ismail, which is not like in the place of the love of Allah. This is a natural love. If a father doesn't love his son, there's something wrong with him. So this is not to condemn, of course, this is but to show the highest level of the love that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raised and elevated Ibrahim alayhi salam. أراد الله تعالى أن يصفي وده. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to purify Yusafi from as-Saffat, wuddahu, his love, and showing that love, وَيَخْتَبِرَ خُلَّتَهُ, and to test his khulla, his highest level of love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَأَمَرَهُ أَنْ يَذْبَحَ مَنْ زَاحَمَ حُبُّهُ حُبَّ رَبِّهِ. So he commanded him to slaughter the one that zaham, and muzahama is when something becomes crowded. when the love of his son might be looks like it's in the same with the love of Allah. So that's the test has to separate. That's what the test is. The test separates things. فلما قدم حب الله وآثره على هواه, when he put forward the love of Allah and make the ithar over his own desire, وعزم على ذبحه, and he reached him to the state of al-azm, the determination to slaughter him, وزال ما في القلب من المزاحم, and removed from the heart this muzahim, this thing that came into the heart, the love of his son Ismail. Now it's removed because now he fulfilled the test. بقى الذبح لا فائدة فيه. Then the dhabh has no benefit in it. There's no benefit in slaughtering his son. It was all about removing from the heart the love of anything except the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reach the highest level of al-khulla. فلهذا قال إن هذا لهو البلاء المبين, which is this last statement to show that this is what the trials are for. Any trial, any test, any calamity, any oppression, anything that we think of that faces an individual, faces an ummah, in large, it's because of this. The hearts are contaminated. Testing the hearts, whether the hearts are attached to this worldly life or the hereafter. And before that, whether the hearts are attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or to worldly means or to human beings. Whether the hearts are attached to this worldly life or the hereafter. And then you make a list of all matters of aqidah and all matters of deeds done by the heart. Fear, hope, love, pleasure, patience, seeking rewards, all of these and more. Is it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone or to other than Allah? Then the test comes. Do you fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone or you fear Allah and fear other than Allah? Then the test comes as a way that Allah bestows favor upon the believers for them to be elevated and to get into the level of only fearing Allah, only hoping for the rewards from Allah, only the love of Allah. And once they pass this, then no slaughtering and nothing whatsoever. It's all about what's the heart. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most wise, and He decree for His people what is the best for them. And then وَفَدَيْنَاهُ بِذِبْحٍ عَظِيمٍ. We'll talk about that inshallah ta'ala tomorrow if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. The attendance code is Al-Istislam. Al-Istislam, submission, act of surrounding. No. Al-Istislam. Any questions? Anything? And that's why many of the debates and questions and things like this, sometimes when us as Muslims, someone says all kinds of things, well, let's read the Quran first. Then after that, you see that many of the doubts and questions and everything is taken care of, because this is the foundation of things, especially the Makki surahs. This is such an important thing. This is what we are in need of. Someone from a distance, he would say, what is this? We're facing this and facing that. But to understand how things are, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created things, then we would get to know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. طيب بارك الله فيكم. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept inshallah. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم ربنا وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.